So, you're here because you think you need to get better at sales. Well, I think most founders think that sales is about pitching features, demonstrating product capabilities, and hoping prospects say yes. They think that if they just explain their solution well enough, people will buy. But here's the truth that I've found is that sales calls aren't about product really at all. The best founders I've coached close 60 to 80% of their qualified prospects using a framework that has almost nothing to do with features and benefits and everything to do with psychology. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the closer framework, popularized and created by Alex Hormozi. And I went to Alex's 2-day intensive workshop recently, and it was amazing, right? He unpacked this exact framework and a couple of others for us in person. And so I have a unique take on this that you probably haven't seen anywhere else. And if you're not familiar with it, the closer framework is a 6-step process that stacks on top of each other systematically to move prospects from skeptical to sold. And more importantly, I'll show you why each step really matters and how skipping even just one can kill an entire deal. I've used this framework to help more than 200 SaaS founders, probably just like you, increase their close rates, and I've personally closed over $10 million in enterprise deals in my sales history. This isn't just theory, it is what actually works. Let's dive into the closer framework. And to start with, here's something that will blow your mind, and it did when I heard this stat. 87% of prospects can't clearly articulate why they booked a call with you. Can you believe that? And that's where we get started. The C in closer stands for clarify. And this isn't just about you understanding their use case. This is about getting them to verbalize their motivation for being there in the first place. And most founders that I started working with jump straight into, hey, tell me about your business, or what problems are you facing? Wrong, right? Instead, we want to start with, hey, before we dive in, I'm curious, what specifically made you want to book this call with me today? Let's say you're selling a customer success platform, maybe. Don't ask, hey, what are your customer success challenges? Instead, ask, hey, what happened that made you think I need to look at customer success tools? And the difference here is subtle, but really massive. The first question gets you really generic answers that you really can't do anything with. And the second gets you an emotional trigger that was the thing that brought them to you. And this step sets the foundation for everything else. If you don't understand their motivation, you can't connect your solution to the thing that actually matters to them. So we typically call this the discovery phase of a sales process, but it goes a lot deeper than that. But why? Why does this work, Craig, right? And it is because people don't buy solutions to problems they can live with. They buy solutions to problems that are really freaking massive and painful in their life or in their business. And so when someone can clearly state why they are there, they're already 70% sold on the need for change, which is a huge obstacle that we have to get over, right? And our job just becomes connecting that need that they have with our solution. It's that simple. And not creating the need in the first place. Because if you have to create and overcome need, it's just a whole nother kind of mountain of work. Okay, so this next step is where I think a lot of founders lose prospects. In the closer framework, the L stands for label. And it's about this active listening that forces prospects to confront the reality of their situation. You're not just hearing what they say, you're reflecting it back to them in a way that makes the problem really undeniable and kind of massive for them. So here's the pattern that I typically like to use is after they explain their situation, you might say something like, so it sounds like, and then repeat exactly kind of what they said back to them. And then you label their problems in terms that they maybe haven't even used. So if a prospect says, our churn rate has been climbing lately, don't just nod and move on and say, oh, that's a bummer, right? Label it. So it sounds like you're in a situation where you're spending more on acquisition than you're retaining in revenue, and that's really putting your growth trajectory and your company at risk. See what happened there? I took this kind of surface level pain and connected it to a business consequence down the road that they might not fully understand even yet. So this step really transforms kind of vague concerns that a prospect might have into concrete problems with clear business impact. It really is the difference between, oh gosh, I have some issues, and I have this giant gash in my neck kind of level problem that's costing us money every day. And the psychological principle here is really that people don't fully understand their own problems until someone else mirrors it back to them and presents them with some clarity. And so if you can accurately label their situation, two things happen. First is they say, gosh, Craig really gets me. That's amazing. And second, they really start to feel the weight of inaction, which a barrier every single one of us has to overcome in sales. Just the status quo is a huge obstacle for all of us. And so this creates like this emotional foundation for everything that comes next. I want to pause here just for a second and kind of check in. Are we kind of grokking the power of the framework here and this approach to sales conversations? I hope you're not just hearing what I'm saying, but visualizing how you're going to implement this in your next sales call. And if that's the case, I made a special guide that's really just like a plug and play kind of way for you to build your next sales call. The link is in the description below. If you really want to level up your close rate and your sales skills, check it out. Okay, so we're about to get real with the third one here. And this is the part that separates pretty good founders from amazing closers. And the O in the closer framework is overview. And specifically overviewing their past experiences with trying to solve this problem. And it isn't just about gathering information, it's about systemically increasing their kind of perception of the pain that they're experiencing. So maybe think about it like this. If someone just had a steak dinner, they don't want another steak. But if they've been trying to find a good steak for like months, every restaurant has disappointed them, they're going to pay a premium for that one. Or maybe even better and more relatable, if someone's been looking for tacos recently and all they've had is Taco Bell, and you're South Beach Bar and Grill in San Diego, if you've ever been best fish tacos in the world, you're about to rock their world, right? So we're just talking about different things here. So maybe asking questions like, hey, what have you tried before to solve this? And how did that work out for you? And what didn't work about that approach, right? What about this steak or this taco wasn't working for you? And it gives you the opportunity to frame your solution in a different way. So maybe they mention a competitor, and you might say, hey, help me understand what didn't work out about competitor X. What was the gap between what they promised and what you actually experienced? And then you might dig deeper and say, hey, what was the impact of that gap on your team or your customers or on you personally? And just a pro tip here, this is a fantastic way to disqualify prospects too. If they have unrealistic expectations from a previous provider, it might be that you actually don't want to close this customer. There'll be a bigger burden for you and your business and your team than passing them on to a competitor, which is my favorite tactic. Find your most hated competitor and pass disqualified customers on to them. But in the overview past experiences kind of section, each question compounds on the previous one. You're not just cataloging failures, but you're building the case that the status quo is unacceptable and previous attempts have only made things worse, right? That finding that steak or that better taco just didn't work out and you have a better mousetrap. You're increasing the deprivation around the outcome they want, that every failed attempt becomes evidence that they just need a different way to do this. And by the time you're done with this section, staying with their current situation will feel more painful than the risk of trying something new, overcoming that status quo. And this is exactly where we want them before we move on to presenting our solution. Okay, so remember when I said that most founders, and sorry, especially technical founders, I love y'all, but this still applies to you. You missed the mark by selling features instead of selling against pain, right? And the S in the closer framework stands for sell, but not what you think. You're not selling your product. You're selling the vacation, as Alex says, not the plane flight. You're selling the destination, not the journey. And most founders spend, 80% of their sales calls explaining how their product works. Features, integrations, workflows, screens, buttons, implementation timelines that nobody cares about until they're convinced that the destination is worth the trip. So instead of something like, oh, our platform has advanced analytics and workflows, try this. It's Monday morning in 2 weeks. And instead of you spending the first 2 hours of your day on spreadsheets trying to figure out which of your customers are going to churn, you get a notification that says, hey, have your customer success team check out these 12 customers that need attention today, and here's exactly what to do about it. So it's 10 o'clock, you've had your second cup of coffee, and the biggest thing on your to-do list for the day is done. You see the difference here? I don't want to create more work for my prospects. I want to give them the vision of the bridge that they're about to go over to that promised land, right? I've painted a picture of their new reality. The reality here is people buy transformations, not tools, right? They buy the feeling of being in control, but not the features that create control. And our job as founders and salespeople is to make them feel that experience and see what success looks like before they've bought anything. Okay, so now comes the moment where deals are either closed or they die, and it's really predictable if you've seen enough sales calls. The E in the closer framework stands for explain away concerns. Also maybe known as objection handling if you've kind of seen other videos of mine. But here's where most founders get it wrong. A lot of founders wait for objections to come up at the end of a call and then try to overcome them with the 5 minutes they have left, right? It's just backwards, right? Why are we doing it this way? But the way I do sales calls and the way that I coach other founders is to handle objections before they're raised at all and bring them up proactively, acknowledge it, and resolve it all in the same breath. And by the way, I did a whole video about objection handling. Link is in the description below if you want to check it out. And so the pattern here might be something like, hey, so you might be thinking, or a lot of our clients worry about this, followed by the objection and followed then by why it's actually not a problem. So for example, you might say something like, hey, you might be thinking like, wow, this sounds great, but we tried a similar tool last year and adoption was terrible. Look, I totally get it. And here's the difference on how we kind of implement this and solve this different than most tools, right? Most tools dump features on users and hope they figure it out. And we start with a 30-day success sprint where we deal directly with your team to build the workflows in their existing process. And by day 30, usage isn't just a hope, it's a habit. You see like the difference there, right? Instead of the prospect raising the objection, you raise it for them and control the narrative and overcome the objection before they can even bring it up. Ninja level objection handling, right? And it's not about having the perfect answers to every concern. You just don't need that, right? It's about demonstrating that, hey, I've seen this movie before, I know how it ends, and I'm removing uncertainty that prevents decisions. And it's really a trust building tool as much as anything. And the psychology here is preemption. When I bring up a concern before they do, I am accomplishing two things. One, that I understand their perspective, and I can control the conversation around an objection. And it positions me as a trusted advisor instead of just another vendor trying to overcome resistance in a sales process, because nobody wants that. Okay, and the final step is really where the magic happens, but only if you've taken all the other steps, right? And the R stands for reinforce. And this happens after you've gotten the close, interestingly enough. And this isn't about getting the signature. It's about making sure they feel confident in their decision and excited about what comes next. Because I think most founders get so excited about closing the deal that they rush through this part. And it's a huge mistake because buyer's remorse is very real, and it starts about 5 seconds after someone says yes to a big purchase or commitment. And the framework here is that you want to confirm the decision, paint the future kind of picture, and set the next meeting, right? Get in action what is about to happen. So I might say something like, hey, I'm excited to work with you on this just to make sure that we're aligned. You're moving forward because you're tired of reactive churn management and want to get ahead of customer issues before they become a problem. Then they'll say, yes, great, amazing, please help me with this. And then I might say something like, here's what the next 90 days are going to look like. And I'll walk them through the entire transformation. And then finally, I'll say, okay, let's get your implementation call scheduled right now. While we're both here, open up your calendar. How does Tuesday at 10 o'clock look like? And this isn't really an afterthought. It is a very specific part of the sales process. And it's a foundation of leading up to customer success. How you handle the first few minutes after they say yes determines whether they're going to be a case study and a poster of your kind of ideal customer, or they're going to churn. And the big thing that we're doing here is reinforcing the decision that they just made and creating momentum, right? Because people come to you because they have this huge problem and you want to get them on the path to getting that solved, right? We're reinforcing the smart decision that they just made by connecting it back to their original motivation in the very first part of the call. Why are we talking here today, right? We're building momentum by immediately moving on to the next step. So that's the closer framework. Alex Hormozi is an exceptional salesperson. I've seen it in person and it's really compelling. And these 6 steps that he has put together that all stacked very systemically and intentionally on top of each other will move your prospects from kind of skeptical to sold. And remember, clarify their motivation, label the problem, overview the pain, sell the outcome, explain away concerns, and reinforce the decision. But look, here's the thing. Knowing these steps isn't enough, right? The magic happens in execution, and that only comes from practice and refinement. And so if you want to dive deeper into advanced sales frameworks that actually work for SaaS founders, I've got a video breaking down the exact process and script I use for closing deals all the time. It's called The Only Sales Script You'll Ever Need. I'll leave a link in the description below. And look, if you want to dive deeper into advanced sales frameworks that really work for SaaS founders, probably just like yourself, I've got a video breaking down the exact script I use for enterprise deals, and it's this one right here.